Okay, welcome everyone to our Economy and Development Select Committee meeting. Before we go on to the agenda, I think it'd be worthwhile if we all just introduce ourselves, potentially just for the purpose of those that might be listening in via webcasting. So I'm Councillor Sarah Jones, the Chair of the committee.
Hazel Eilert, Scrutiny.
Richard Williams, Democratic Services Officer.
Ian Saunders, Head of Tourism, Leisure and Culture.
Kelly Byrne, Chief Officer, Enterprise.
Councillor John Prosser, Member of Scrutiny Committee.
Councillor Bob Hayward, Member of the Committee.
Councillor Doug Edwards, Member of the Committee.
Councillor Dave Evans, Member of the Committee.
Councillor Alan Wintle, Member of the Committee.
Councillor David Dovey, Member of the Committee.
James Woodcock, Business Insights Manager, Monmouthshire Business and Enterprise.
Okay, thank you everyone, and welcome to Nathan as well from the Argus. We'll just take the two more. We're just doing a quick introduction, so just for the purpose of anyone who might be watching in on webcasting. Do you want to just introduce yourselves to those that have just joined?
Peter Davis, Head of Commercial and People Development.
Great, thank you everyone. We'll go into our first agenda item, which is apologies for absence.
Just one apology, Chair, from Councillor White.
That's noted. Declarations of interest, members, of the Abergavenny Business Improvement District. Can I ask officers, is it Catherine and Peter that will be taking this item? Yeah. Would you like to present the paper, or have you got a presentation? Brilliant. Okay, thank you.
Good morning, everybody. I'm Kath Fallon, Head of Economy and Enterprise, here to talk to you about the Abergavenny Business Improvement District. Really, the purpose of today's report and the presentation is to present details of the proposed Business Improvement District, or BID, in Abergavenny, and discuss the associated implications for the Council should there be a majority vote and outcome. First of all, a bit of context really in terms of what is a BID. A business improvement districts were first established in 2004. The latest figures, there are 188 in existence, 3 of which are in Wales, one particularly in Swansea, which has been running for a while, and 11 in development, of which Abergavenny is one. And they're business-led initiatives in a defined area, and businesses come together to agree town improvements, implementations and the associated costs. In order to fund the town improvements, there's a chargeable levy which is determined by the rateable value, which is above 10,000, and that is to fund projects in the boundary area. There is one thing that's quite distinct we need to be aware of. Any projects to be funded need to be additional to those that are actually provided by the council and any other public sector organisation. As a result of that, there are baseline surveys going on at the moment to determine those levels of service that are in place at the moment, so everybody will know where they are should the ballot be approved in June. So why Abergavenny? Well, Abergavenny was identified, and the Business Improvement District was identified as an opportunity in the Whole Place Plan, linking to the Our County Thrives a piece of the Single Improvement Plan. It was a funding opportunity from Welsh Government as a result of a bid we'd put in for the Vibrant and Viable Places funding, and was actually as a result of a member from the Abergavenny Business Club and also the Civic Society going to a presentation and expressing an interest in the Business Improvement District. There was a funding opportunity for some consultancy costs for advice and support to undertake the bid ballot, and that's where we are at the present time. The bid objectives, which are indicated in their draft business plan, which is part of your papers today, are to increase footfall and spend in Abergavenny, really as a destination town. And there's been some work undertaken in Abergavenny recently in terms of what that means to local people and as a visitor destination. And also to create a quality environment where people can access the town easily and efficiently, so in terms of the landscape of the town. And also to ensure that the town has a mix of sectors, so in other words, a good shopping experience and services which support each other. And the whole purpose of this is to enhance the town's offer and the vitality, with a view to sort of long-term sustainability. The associated opportunities with the bid, there are 431 properties in the bid area who would be liable to pay the bid levy should the ballot be approved. And this is anticipated to raise approximately £250,000 per year for 5 years, which would generate in excess of £1.25 million of investment over the 5-year period. But as was discussed and raised actually by Councillor Edwards at the Abergavenny Town Council meeting last night, the potential here is the match funding opportunity, particularly in terms of European funding opportunities, in the fact that it's actually what we would term as clean money, so it can be matched to actually draw down additional funds should that be what the bid group decide to do. There is a democratic process that's taken place. Consultation started in April 2014, and at this point I really wanted to thank my colleague James Woodcock, our Business Insights Manager, who has done a sterling job at this and has been there from the start. And as we can see, there's various different activities that have taken place, from a confidence survey down to consultation events for the Abergavenny Business Club, another one, a public meeting hosted by the Civic Society, a business workshop in the Angel in June, which has all resulted in a draft business plan which was delivered to all businesses in the bid area in December last year. There's also a mail out that has just gone out, just informing people about the levy and the timing of the ballot, and the consultants are currently undertaking one-to-one consultations with businesses to ensure they're aware of what is going on. There's been a task group which has been formed from businesses within the bid area, and it's that task group that's determined the draft business plan that you see within your papers. The final business plan will be distributed to businesses in April this year, with a view to this providing the basis for the ballot, which will take place between June and July. The bid is only becomes compulsory if businesses vote in its favour on 2 counts. One is an overall majority, and that majority is of that vote must also represent a higher rateable value than those businesses who have voted no. So it's quite a strict criteria. So the recommendations really for today as a part of the report is to note the boundary of the bid, which is on page 38 of your papers, which actually shows how that's mapped within the town and around the town centre. There's also a need to agree some financial provision, because clearly the council has a stake in that area, and should the ballot be approved, there would be a levy for those establishments that we have there. But we don't anticipate that to be in excess of £10,000 per annum. We actually think it's about £9,900. And this would be £9,900 per year for the 5 years. But that would enable then the council to actually have a vote on what those activities are in terms of the bid area. So the council would need to exercise that vote, and we would ask that authorities delegated to Peter Davis, Head of Commercial and People Development, in terms of the work that we do with him on the economy and enterprise area. And also that formal notice of the ballot has been received by the Chief Executive and the Returning Officer. In terms of actually charging the bid delivery mechanism, we say bid delivery mechanism because at this point we're still determining whether or not the bid will actually run as a separate company. So we're calling it a bid delivery mechanism at this stage. Because the levy will be actually collected through the authority, there is obviously a cost associated with this in terms of the resource that will be required. So there will be a charge that will be placed on the bid for actually collecting that money. It is likely that the levy bills will go out around about June, July time. Clearly, for the reason being they need to go out at a separate time to the rates bills to show there is a distinction between the two. If a yes vote is secured, we would ask, as has happened with other local authorities, that 35% of the first year's bid levy, which would be approximately £90,000, would be with some upfronting from MCC upon receipt of the bid levy. So in other words, just to allow them to hit the ground running very quickly, knowing full well that money is going to come in through the levies. And also to delegate authority to the head of legal services in consultation with the leader to ensure there's a necessary operating agreement in place between the council and the bid delivery mechanism, whether that be a company or whether they work as a steering group working with the town team. So approval is therefore sought for the allocation of the funds to cover the levy charges, the advance of 90,000 for the bid to enable the bid to start pretty much straight away, although the cash flow implication is minimal, and also an annual charge to the bid delivery mechanism or company, which will be determined once we're aware of the costs that will be associated with this. We are aware that there is a specific software package that's required in order to run the levy and to charge the bills. We think that's around about £10,000 to £14,000 at the moment. We're just awaiting final costs. But however, that will be picked up through the levy, through the bid. So there is no actual cost for that for the authority. It's purely just to issue the bills. Okay, that's it. Thank you very much. We'll take questions.
Thanks, Kath. I think that's a very clear presentation, and one of the things I wanted to just seek clarity on were those recommendations, and I think you've done that very clearly as part of the presentation. But I'll invite members now to come forward with questions on the presentation and the paper that's being presented to you today. Councillor Prosser.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Exciting times for Abergavenny, I feel. We are all heading in the right direction. We are here to scrutinise the plans you've put in place today, according to the recommendations. I'm supportive of all that is happening here on this report. Few points of clarity I ask for. You pay reference to the agreement, operating agreement that will exist between the council and the bid delivery mechanism. I'm aware in the business plan it says there will be a not-for-profit company set up. So I'm interested in how far is that down the road, and do we know who we will be cooperating with? The second question is, you mentioned that we will have a number of votes because of the properties and estates we have within the boundary. I'm just curious of what influence that may have. Obviously, it's up to the businesses or the participants in the bid process to decide what their projects are. So how many votes would we have out of the total number of votes available when it comes to deciding what the projects are? So those are two simple questions, but apart from that, I'm totally supportive.
If I pick up the options in terms of the company, and then James will pick up in terms of the influence and the ballot. We're in discussion at the moment with the consultants in terms of whether it is a separate company or it works directly with the town team. As we discussed at Town Council last night, there's a need to bring these different initiatives together. There is an options paper being presented to the steering group on next Monday evening, in terms of whether it is a not-for-profit company, whether it works alongside as a partnership, and a member of the town team will also be at that meeting to ensure that we can start bringing these things together. Although they'll have separate activities, the ultimate aim is the same in terms of making Abergavenny a better place and a vibrant town centre. So we need to ensure that we've got the right models in place to enable that to happen. So that's a process being undertaken at the moment. When we initially discussed it with the consultants, we were told everybody has a company and that's what you have to have. Our retort is, well, how many of the ones have you worked with that actually have a town team in place? And how many are small market towns in Wales? Which the answer was, well, none of them. So I do think there's a need for them to just consider all the options to ensure that we're getting the right fit for us. And that's what they're doing at the moment.
With regards to the question of the number of Monmouthshire County Council premises within the proposed bid area, there are currently 20. The total number of premises within the bid area as a whole, 431. So that would give us 20 votes, Monmouthshire County Council, 20 votes out of a total of 431 votes.
Chair, as a follow-up, basically, thank you for that answer. But before we enter into any agreement, obviously we need to know who the other party is. So I wish you well in your exercise of trying to get people together to form that consultative body. But the sooner we get that resolved, the better. And hopefully in June we might have a positive result. But then it's up to the businesses, not for me to decide whether they want to go ahead.
Yep, I'll just let Kelly come in now.
Thank you, Chair. Just to add really to what Kath has set out already, and it was part of a conversation that we had last night at a meeting with Abergavenny Town Council and yesterday in Cabinet as well. We presented to Cabinet yesterday the whole place strategy and the evaluation that underpins that, and also a proposal to commission a review of what we've called community governance. And I think it plays directly into the point that Councillor Prosser has made. Yes, there is the potential for the Business Improvement District to have its own company to run the whole scheme. But of course, we've got a town team that's waiting to incorporate as a company as well. We've got no end of different groups and consultative bodies, civic society. We've got the area committee, we've got the area forum, we've got the programme boards. We've got this whole plethora of groups in Abergavenny which could potentially take on status as delivery agents in the future as we look into different ways of running local services. So I think the immediate priority for us now over the coming weeks is just to try and look at things in context and decide who is best placed to do what. Because I think at the moment we're in danger of complicating or overcomplicating the situation because we've got different groups competing with one another, and that's something we clearly need to straighten out before we make further progress.
One last comment, and I'll keep quiet in that sense. Yeah, obviously, it's the traders who are financing the bid, and it's very important that they have a say on their own interests, obviously. So I think you've got difficult ways ahead, because obviously if I was a trader, I'd say, well, hang on, it's my money, I want to decide what I'm going to spend it on. Thank you.
Councillor Watts?
Thank you. The model for this, you said you went to the consultants, and just to kind of, out of curiosity, I don't know, it's probably in here. Who are the consultants?
Mosaic Partnership. They have two local consultants working with them. One is Chris Jones Regeneration, and the other one is a gentleman called Owen Davis, so they do know the Abergavenny area quite well. Right, but the model of this, obviously this is, I mean, this is kind of new to me in as much as I've never seen this kind of initiative before. Have we got any examples, or have they got any examples where can be done elsewhere, where it's kind of good practice? And then obviously it kind of leads into what John was saying really about, the participation, what the models have been before, or what the model has looked like before with other people really. Yeah, I mean, there's 188 in existence, and the reason we appointed Mosaic is that they have been involved with most of those. Right, okay. But I think for us, because we have a town team in place and things are still bedding in at the moment, we wanted to ensure that there was enough opportunity being given for people to discuss how they wanted to go forward. And if the company is the right way, then now this is exactly what will happen. Nobody's saying any different, but I think it's just giving them those opportunities to look at, well, it could be this or it could be that, but just to give them the options really, and they're going to talk about that on Monday evening. Okay, but so all right, on Monday evening. And yes. So what kind of discussion have you had around the company, though, and the makeup of this potentially, if it goes down that road, of the company? Where does that stand? Who will be? You talked a little bit about the votes and stuff and the stakeholders there, but then who would then elect then the officers? How does that play out? In the actual business plan, they've said that there would be a board of directors made up of businesses, that it would be very transparent in its operations because of the points you've just made in terms of it's actually the business's money. They're paying the levy on top of their business rates. So at the moment, they're saying it would be a not-for-profit company. At the moment, all we're asking them is to just look at various different models. If that's what they agree, then that's absolutely fine. What we need to ensure is that they're working with the town team, because the town team also has a remit for a town centre to rejuvenate the town centre. So we need to ensure that everybody knows what everybody else is doing to avoid duplication and to maximise resources to ensure that we get the maximum value for the town. I get that. I totally agree with that. I guess what I'm worried about
is these things, we've seen elsewhere, is sometimes, you can get the town team putting the nose out of other people, the town council likewise, and, you want a kind of, you want a productive environment for this to kind of go forward, and you don't want to have other people, you're always going to get strong personalities like you have on the council here. Do you think you could be, I guess you won't know until Monday really, do you think you'll be satisfied that template will be enough to ensure that, it won't get bogged down with kind of clashes and people having their nose put out and it happens with directors fall out, don't they?
Yeah, I mean, we're pretty confident that we can bring everything together. Our role really is to facilitate this and say James has spent a lot of time in terms of actually setting up the initial steering group and understands the personalities. So it's very much about, all we're doing is facilitating that really. I think it can work. I think the fact now that the town team are actually attending the meeting on Monday evening with the bid steering group is a very good sign. So it's just a matter really of seeing what Monday brings for us actually.
Councillor Dovey.
Thank you, Chairman. I like Councillor Prosser, wish this well. I think it's an exciting project. The only question I would like to know is, at the end of your presentation, you said there will be a need for a software package, and the figure is likely to be about £16,000 or something or other like that. I'm always a little bit timid when somebody says a software package and the figure will be about, because these things grow like topsy. So really what I want to know is, do we have any idea who the provider is? Are we looking for somebody that has experience in this sort of project? Yeah, and how accurate do you think your £16,000 is going to be? Or do you have a view of putting a ceiling on how much it's going to cost?
The company we've had a quote from is called Northgate. Our revenue section are in discussion with them at the moment. The quote they gave them was actually £14,000. They felt that was a bit heavy. So they've gone back to them and are now negotiating it down. We do have confidence in the company in the fact that they have done all the other bids, so they are experienced in terms of what's required. But there is an opportunity to negotiate with them, and that's what our revenue section are doing at the moment. So I take your point.
Thank you, Chairman. I'm happy with that.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Dovey. I've got Councillor Hayward next.
Thank you, Chair. First of all, I'm behind the idea of supporting town regeneration. I just wonder, because in Central Mon we're not into Whole Place or anything yet, it hasn't reached us. I just wonder whether we're the right people to be doing this. We're putting quite a considerable levy onto the businesses of Abergavenny, and we seem to be competing with what the Chamber of Commerce was set up to do. Now, I haven't heard the Chamber of Commerce mentioned once, not during the presentation or in the paper. But what we are proposing here seems to me to be exactly the same aims as the Chamber of Commerce. But, of course, it's going to have an advantage because there's a £250,000 levy coming on top, which the Chamber of Commerce doesn't have anything near that sort of money. But I wonder if that money went to the Chamber of Commerce, whether they would do a better job than council officers, because the Chamber of Commerce is more suited for that sort of business. Now, I noticed that one of the main advantages out of this is to attract match funding, which would be right. But are we saying, could I have some clarification on this, is whether the Chamber of Commerce would be prohibited from going from the same match funding, and therefore we're just trying to introduce another vehicle? Or whether we're in fact competing and stopping because we have bigger resources. I mean, we're going to spend £90,000 on administration, we're going to have a £14,000 software package, which the Chamber of Commerce obviously doesn't have, but we just going to put ourselves in a position where we're going to outbid and outcompete the Chamber of Commerce. The other thing is, if it's going for match funding, why didn't we simply put it under the umbrella of CMC Squared? Because CMC Squared was set up, I think, also for this exactly same purpose. So why are we now setting up another business community interest company when we already have a company, CMC Squared, which is struggling for work to do? Why didn't we just put it under that umbrella? Thank you, Chair.
In terms of the Chamber of Commerce, the Abergavenny Business Club are actually, there were members of the Abergavenny Business Club that went to the first event about the Business Improvement District. They are also members of the Abergavenny Business Club on the bid steering group, so they are fully informed and very much behind this. We've had many discussions with the Abergavenny Business Club. They're going through a process of change at the moment, having lost one chairman and starting with another chairman at the moment. But they are fully aware of and have been very supportive of this from day one. In terms of the match funding element, it is an opportunity open to anybody, really. It doesn't stop any other group applying for match funding. It's just notoriously difficult to find. If we've got an opportunity there of £250,000 coming in every year, it does open up other opportunities. In terms of CMC Squared, unfortunately, the business improvement districts are actually running on a totally different legislation. And therefore, they actually set up as business improvement district companies or, agencies, really. It's quite difficult in terms of we've been looking at the legislation recently. We were discussing whether or not it was a not-for-profit company. So at the moment, we were only running in that way, really. I don't know if you want to add, Peter.
I mean, I think it probably tails back to, I think, the earlier conversation, really, and Callie's comments where she referred to, I guess, what is a relative proliferation of groups and societies and vehicles that exist at the moment in Abergavenny. As Cass touched on, the legislation requires a distinct and separate vehicle to be created in its own right. As things stand at the moment, we don't see CMC Squared as sort of playing a direct part in that at the moment.
Councillor Hayward, do you want to come back on that? Or is that
Chairman, can I just clarify that the company that we're talking about to run the bid won't be our company? It's a company that's going to be owned, run and managed by the business community. So it's totally distinct. So I think what Kath has described is very much about us enacting our enabling and facilitating role in working with the business community so they can do this. And yes, we'll still play very much a supportive role, but we won't be running or operating this company. That's for them to do quite clearly.
Councillor Hayward.
Could I just come back on that? I wasn't going to come back, but if you start playing with figures, we've already had it. We've got 20 votes out of 437 to decide whether it's set up in the first place, which is 5%. If we assume that it goes through on a majority of 220, we will then have 10% of the people who voted for it. I think it would be very doubtful if we didn't have a sizable representation on the board. And if you say that the board will be set up without a single Monmouthshire County Council representative on there, I'd be very surprised, but I would probably welcome it because it would probably direct the business away from Monmouthshire County Council's interests into the businesses of Abergavenny's interests.
Okay, thank you. Are there any further comments from officers or move on? Okay, that'll be noted. Councillor Edwards.
Yes, thank you, Chair. The only difficulty I have is why we are having a conflict, or at least the Welsh Government are having a conflict, that they don't want the bid company to be a CIC and the town team to be a CIC. They are two separate entities, and the business club, for your information, Bob, is a rebranded name of the Abergavenny Chamber of Trade, so it is representative of the businesses in the community. One of the recommendations today is 90,000. That really is only in advance anyway. It's really to get it up and running as of day one, and that money will be recouped. It seems to me the only charge that we are going to make is the collection charge of the rates, which is about 4%. I think 10,000 in $250,000 is, I think, something like 4%. So I've got no axe to grind there. Is there a plan B though? What happens if they don't vote? That's it, finish, Feeney? I sent you a letter, the details, you and Peter, a few days ago that acknowledged a letter in the Chronicle, which was very negative. And in fact, the businessman really got all his facts wrong, as far as I can see. Everything you said here this morning supports what I already thought and knew, etc. And this guy, the leading businessman in Abergavenny, got it all wrong. So I hope that you will rectify that as soon as possible. fully supported the whole scheme. Perhaps you'd like to say what is the difficulty? If I was in business and I wanted to sort of branch out and do something else, which we used to do in the past, you'd set up another company, and that's all it's happening, is you've got a company running bid, which is completely under their control. You know, if they want to spend $250,000 on advertising, Abergavenny, so be it. You know, that's up to them. It would be nice to think that some of that, $250,000, may well be invested in some of the infrastructure ideas in Abergavenny. The town team task has, in a way, a much wider brief, because it's not only looking at the town regeneration, it's looking actually at the more social aspects of the community as well. So to that extent, just tell me, why can't they both have separate CICs?
If they decide that's what they want, then yes, they can have separate CICs. I think my only concern with CICs is there is a layer of governance on top of that, which is in addition to a normal not-for-profit social enterprise. But there is nothing to stop them doing that. Our main thing is really ensuring that they work together. And that's the only thing that we've asked them to look at in terms of what the options are, and also to encourage the town team to talk to the bid group to ensure that we're maximising and making sure we get the best, the best results, and to avoid duplication. In terms of a plan B, we would very much work with the members of the bid group and the town team to see if they can't bring some of their ideas in line with what the town team will be doing, with a view to us then, seeing if we can find funding from elsewhere to help them achieve what they want to achieve.
I've got a couple of questions myself, if I may. I know we're a relatively small part of this business improvement district, but in terms of reporting back on an annual basis, will that be something that Peter will do as our representative on that group? And, how will that sort of come back to us as a committee, just to scrutinise the value we're getting from that 5-year commitment? Businesses under £10,000 rateable value, they won't have a voice then because they're unable to contribute. Okay. And has the bid looked at the issue around devolution of business rates that's coming to Wales? I don't think it'll affect anything negatively, but potentially it could do. The Welsh Government could decide to operate a completely different rate system in Wales, which could then impact on the business's ability to contribute to a bid if they're also having an increase in their rateable amount they have to provide.
I think if I respond to the first question, and I'm not sure whether Kath's in a position to respond to the second one regarding devolution, or maybe James, but certainly, absolutely, it will be a case whereby we will look to bring updates back to committee. I guess through you, Chair, just to determine as to how frequently you wish that information to come back, whether annual is sufficient or whether we bring it back. And I'm sure we will do anyway as part of our normal reporting back into committee around economic development and business growth and enterprise.
In terms of your second point, I'd like to research that and come back to you, if that's okay.
Yeah, I don't envisage it being a problem, but it is something I just think the bid group need to be mindful of in terms of, what to improve. Sorry, Councillor Edwards, did you want to follow up?
Yeah. Are we definitely going to have a representative on their board? I know we'll have 20 votes or whatever. Are we definitely going to have a representative or not? At officer level or at member level?
It will very much depend, Councillor Edwards, upon the company structure that they eventually go for. So if it is a representative structure, then yes, we would be entitled to have representation. But obviously at that point, and when we get that confirmation, we would bring it back to this committee for discussion before we take a recommendation onwards.
Members, are there any other questions on this item? Councillor Evans.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We're talking about Abergavenny, and you're also talking about boundaries. Are these people in the town centre, business people, only able to go for this bid, or can it be outside the town centre?
It's businesses within the defined boundary, so there was time taken in terms of actually defining that boundary by the steering group and also sort of by the businesses involved. So yes, within the boundary.
Chair, by the map, it actually includes land forest, so it does actually go out to what I call strictly the town boundary.
Same question. Okay. You content with that? Yes. That's okay. Okay. Members, any other questions before we move to just sum up and then look at the recommendations just to agree those? Is everyone content? I think, you know, this does represent a real opportunity alongside a lot of the other work we're doing. And obviously we had the vote on the loan funding from Viable Places last week. We've got the whole place planning. And given there was a really extensive consultation since April 2014, I think we'll be confident that businesses are well briefed on what's being proposed and when the vote comes forward. We did discuss the operating agreement and setting up not-for-profit, how far established and how many votes that we'd have. There was a discussion around consultants that have undertaken the report. We looked at other examples that have come before and models that have been proposed from other bid areas. And around leadership, I think one of the key things for us is to see strong leadership of this group, because that's how success will be determined. Councillor Dovey mentioned about software packages and the amount that would need to be contributed from. There was a discussion again, Councillor Ed was talking about the separate CICs and the impact of that. Reporting back, we've discussed, and then just outlining the boundary area as well was important, and just to note that on the final page of the report. So in terms of the recommendations, of which there are 7, are we happy to take them as a whole, and are members content with the recommendations? Okay. Okay, so we'll recommend that those go forward then, as outlined. Okay, thanks members. We'll move on to agenda item 6, which is our scrutiny of Monmouthshire cycling events, the return on investment and the evaluation from 2014. Ian, are you taking this item forward? And if you've got a presentation, or would you just want to talk us through the paper? Okay.
Good morning. Thank you for inviting us to talk through the return on investment for the National Cycling Road Race Championships and the 2014 Tour of Britain. I think it's important to note, firstly, that the papers that have been sent across in this have been prepared by other companies to bring this to the Select, and maybe in they were aimed at slightly a different angle. I think we've still got some work to do from Monmouthshire County Council and the events team and myself in bringing forward a further report to further clarify and detail the the return on investment, because I think it's fair to say from the reports, whilst there's good detail in there, probably some of the facts and figures you probably want to scrutinise are not listed in any depth. So just I'd start with that. Last year obviously saw us deliver 2 of the biggest cycling races across the UK. Some fabulous outcomes there, and I think it's listed in the different presentations. Certainly, if you take on the road race champions firstly, it was such a week of spectacular cycling, and also it brought a huge amount of people into the right across Monmouthshire, not just Abergavenny, although the focus was on Abergavenny, where we saw most of the return. But certainly to see 130 riders for the time trial. Unfortunately, Bradley Wiggins did ride the time trial. Geraint Thomas all went on to great success. And we had an awful lot of female riders as well that signed up more than ever before in any other event. So from an actual cycling side, the British Cycling were absolutely thrilled with what we delivered, and that's gone right, resonated through the country. What a good job Monmouthshire did, and certainly put Monmouthshire on the map for cycling, even though it was already on the map, even more so. So I think when we're talking about what was achieved, we had business sponsorship. There was a whole package of different things that went on that week, from people going to cycling. Cinema was full on the Monday night in the festival. We had a Friday night in the town that was just really, really exceptional. So these were all added value to the actual two races. If we go on to the Tour of Britain, the actual post-evaluation was done by a company, which is a national company called Frontline, and they actually got a model that they put in place. So it might be better if I take questions on that, because whilst we've given it as information to you, obviously we didn't prepare it, but this is a nationally recognised way of gathering return on investment. So it's one model, and I'd like you to obviously consider that, because we are talking about a toolkit now that we need to agree on for measuring return on investment across. And this is an example of one that is obviously, you know, hugely respected. And maybe it's right or wrong, but it's for debate, I guess. And we'd like, obviously, your input on that. So is it...
Do you want us to look at that first then?
Yeah,
I mean, because I
might be
mentioned there'll be
best.
lots of wider questions, but I think one of the key recommendations here is to look at the evaluation model and whether or not to use that for future events. So we need to be clear that that's appropriate and fit for purpose. Can you just remind us what pages should we focus on? Because I must say the report's quite a bulky document and it's quite difficult to drill down some of the detail. Yeah, I mean, it's fantastic to have that level of information, but at the same time, from a scrutiny perspective, it's quite difficult to really get to grips with some of the detail. But so which pages should we be focusing on then, Ian, now as part of the, specifically on the measurement of success and return on
I'm
investment?
not sure what page it's going to be. It's page, well, really Appendix 1, I would say, the displacement, the multiplier effect, and I'm not sure what it's going to be on your agenda because I've got my...
Okay. I think it would be
Sort
the
of-
summary of economic impacts UK. Is that the starting on page 6, members? I think possibly that's the, well, actually slightly before that. There's lots of data before that. But if we're looking at the model that we're being asked to focus on, I think it's that page. Okay, so if members got any questions around, do you wanted to question around in terms of the model that was being used here? I'll start with Councillor Watson, Councillor Hayward.
Yeah, well, I'm not entirely sure. Sorry, Chair. I don't know what other members feel, if they feel the same. But what we have is a lot of statistics, but no evidence that these are where they've come from. Who's kind of actually, you know, put these together, and what you know what the evidence base is, other than, you know, they've did a bit of a vox pop. There's a lot of kind of, yeah, again, I'm sorry, I'm just sifting through all the photos and stuff, you know. There's a lot about media coverage. I just had a look on Google myself, and, you know, I wouldn't say that it had the coverage I'd hoped for. I don't want to be pessimistic about it, because, I mean, I've got a split kind of mind on this, really. I think it is... I like cycling. Cycling's a good sport, and I think that we have an opportunity to improve on this. But I guess overall, I'm not entirely sure we have the capacity to do that. As far as the evidence we've got here, I'm not convinced, and I'm looking to be convinced, about the economic advantage of hosting this and the cost-benefit analysis associated with this event, which I think has taken up a lot of time for the authority. I think it's good to be ambitious. I really, really do think it's good ambition for this authority. But looking at the state of our roads and looking at the job, sorry if I'm going, you can stop me any time, Chair, or members can stop me any time. If you look at the... Well, only that, I guess I'm looking to, what I'm trying to say is I'm looking for some kind of serious... Well, it has, because I've got a business that runs, you know, that the route runs in front of. And what I noticed was, I have to say this, is that you'll have one of MCC's workers come along, they put a load of, you know, kind of tar over the top of it, reverse the truck over that, and it's been like that for a year. You've got erosion of double yellow lines. So I'm going off on one. It might be a conflict of interest, but on the day, I can only say what I said. I was really curious to see how well this would be attended. I was probably a good person to ask from a Chepstow perspective. And I was really quite disappointed with the turnout. I thought it would be busier than that. I thought that we'd have a lot more cycle enthusiasts being involved. I thought we'd have the public, bearing in mind that, you know, we've got celebrity now, cyclists, they're proper, you know, serious sporting personalities. They're up there with kind of, I don't know, rugby players and football players. I just expected more from it. I'm sorry, Chair, if that's rather pessimistic. I'll let other members fire in some few questions now.
I think it's a perfectly legitimate question to have, that you're just looking for those reassurances, which we might be able to be given now by Ian, that that it was worth our while and that the cost-benefit analysis is robust. Yeah, so I think that's perfectly acceptable.
Yeah, I can only answer on what I know was done for the road race champions with our own team that went out and market researched people that came from all over Britain, to be fair, and that information is the detail that I haven't provided for this, and I'm sorry I've done that. It is, you know, something that we need to do so that you can properly scrutinise the return on investment. The data is there, certainly for the Road Race Championships. Tour of Britain Frontline, who did this research, I would imagine would have done a similar piece of work on the market research of the audience that do come to the events. And I know from what we know about the Road Race Champions, significant impact across, and people coming far and wide and staying in hotels and bed and breakfast. But it's not just that bit, it's they visit the countryside, and they visit the towns, and they want to come back. So we know from our steam figures that people that come into Monmouthshire are likely to come back. So, you know, getting new people into the county is really important, and I know from the Road Race Championships we achieved that. So I'm not sure if that answers some of.
But
what you're
if
asking
I may,
about.
how do you actually know that? I mean, I don't see genuinely now. I don't. If you're saying, look, this is a warm up. If you turn around to me and said, look, this is a warm up for something bigger and better. If we really pursue this and we improve our roads and we improve facilities and we push on with this event and we build up our reputation, then one day. It's part of the Tour de France. As you know, they slip into other countries. That probably this part of Wales could be part of Tour de You'd have me on board straight away. I think that's a wonderful aspiration and ambition. But have we got the resources to do it based on, and this is my point, based on the state of Monmouthshire's roads? They are appalling. You know how bad they are. They're absolutely shocking. And then if you look at the makeshift and sloppy way that we deal with, you know, the roads, and particularly that event, it calls into question whether or not we've got the capacity of whether or not we're overstretching ourselves. There's no harm in stretching yourself. That's what, you know, that's where you get to where you want to get to. But can we really do it?
I think, Ian, sorry, Ian, you go ahead, but I think Kelly wants to come in.
I'd just
after
like
you,
to come
if
back
that's
on that. Actually, our roads, compared to our surrounding authorities, what we get told by our cyclists, we are the cycling playground, and it is absolutely, Monmouthshire, I think, is the right place for the road racing. It is, you know, seen as a massively improved infrastructure. I think it's seen as, you know, we've got the Tumble, some iconic areas that people come to Cardiff and then they want to get to Tumble by 6 o'clock in the morning to go up the Tumble just to experience it. So I think it's a better understanding, and probably that's my role to try and get that across in what we have actually got and what a reputation we've got across the UK and Europe. Monmouthshire is seen as this, you know, road race capital. It is seen. It really is seen like that. When you go to, we had the National Cyclocross Championships at Abergavenny, and all over the mic, and there's people coming from Yorkshire, from all, were saying how, you know, Monmouthshire excels in road race cycling and how its reputation goes before it. So I think we have got a strong tradition in cycling. We're never going to have big facilities and big massive clubs, are we? We're not that. We haven't got those big towns that are going to support, you know, the Cardiff City stadiums and that. What we have got is some brilliant roads and countryside that we need to celebrate.
We did, didn't we? Sorry to interrupt. We had Caldecott Hang on, we did have Caldecott Cycle Club. I mean, it's just something, you know, that I used to participate in before I put on 3 stone. And I'm interested enough in to ask some questions, so please be patient. We used to have Caldecott Cycle Club, as Dave knows, and that was a very successful cycle club. It was. And the people I know that are still involved in cycling don't tell me this. They tell me that the clubs that they're involved in usually go for road racing, and you'll see them on the Landworn Road, won't you, back and forth on that flat strip, which is a fantastic surface. The only conversation I have about cycling is predominantly about that. If you ask Peter Fox where he goes cycling, you'll see Peter Fox on that stretch of road having a heart attack on the side of the road there occasionally. But I'm sorry, I'm not convinced.
Since we've started developing club infrastructure, Monmouthshire Wheelers is probably one of the most progressive clubs in Wales at the moment. It is 2 years, I think it's 2 years since its inception. It's got 70 members plus, maybe more towards 90. Predominantly, you know, there's a lot of social riding, but there's also a lot of women getting involved in it as well. So there's some really good development. Our clubs are seeing massive numbers coming through. So I think that, you know, we're really strong. Last year we won Club of the Year, Coach of the Year for Monmouthshire clubs. You know, these are strong places. Abergavenny and Monmouthshire Wheelers are both areas that, you know, we need to do some work in Monmouth. But, you know, in general, this has inspired more people to go cycling. And I think you can see by the roads there's more people on their bikes.
So my final question is,
sorry,
what, no,
Councillor
my
Watts.
final question is, what's the ambition? What's your final goal for it?
Well, we are ambitious, and we are working with the Tour of Britain. We're still in conversations about more future events. There's still some talk of the Velathon and some quite high profile races that could become, part of Monmouthshire, but it needs a bit of planning and a bit of conversations, should we say. But there are some ambitions to do more, some bigger events.
You're welcome to come back in afterwards, Councillor Watts. I'd like to, because I know there's a lot of other members that are really keen to also add input into this. And I've got Councillor Hayward, Councillor Prosser, Councillor Wintle and Councillor Dovey then, and then following up. Oh, sorry, Councillor Edwards and Councillor Evans as well.
Thank you, Chair. I'm not sure how helpful that last question was, but I can understand why Councillor Watts got deflected. And one of the problems we got is the presentation, as Ian said, it's a very nice presentation, but it is not on the subject of the paper, and therefore it's not helpful, and I think it just caused the confusion that we've seen in the last 5-10 minutes. I think what the report says, the presentation says, is that intuitively we think that having an event brings us to the forefront of the nation, and it's got to somehow help tourism. But what we asked as a committee was, where's the evidence that demonstrates that there's any financial benefit? We know that it puts Monmouthshire's name on the map. We know that people know about Abergavenny, and they know that the commitment to cycling, all the nice things you said. But is it actually worth anything in pound notes? Now, we brought up the instance we had before, and I keep bringing it up. We know that the Ryder Cup certainly put the Celtic Manor and Newport and Monmouthshire on the map, and they put it there. But the figures didn't come through in the STEAM reports. The amount of spend in Monmouthshire didn't rise. It actually fell the year after the Ryder Cup game. And what I was expecting for this paper were figures from the STEAM report. The STEAM figures are the ones we rely on and show that it's doing it, and we recognise that tourism is the most important industry in the county. So what we're looking for is not the nice things, because intuitively, I think everyone would agree that having events makes us feel good, makes the people in Monmouthshire feel good. It should bring up the visitor numbers, and it should bring up the experience, and it should therefore bring up the tourism spend. Why aren't the STEAM figures showing the financial benefit of that spend? And I think that's what the evidence we're looking for, not the state of the roads and whether we're repairing tarmac with wheels and stuff. It's the actual nuts and bolts and the money.
Okay, Kelly.
I think it's a really valid point, and just to try and clarify really what Ian said at the outset, what we were trying to do with these two papers was to give you an early sight of the return on investment reports that the consultants who work for British Cycling have to produce as a result of undertaking these events. But what we're now doing is going through a period of reflection where we've got more financial analysis, we're speaking to the hoteliers, we're speaking to people who own B&Bs, food outlets, so we can really get at that qualitative impact. I think it says in the covering report, Councillor, that the return on investment for the Roadways Championships was 2.76 million, which is something that we've been able to work out based on facts and figures we currently have access to, attracting over 40,000 visitors to Monmouthshire during that weekend. But we won't see the impact of that in the STEAM figures until the new ones are produced to reflect the 14-15 year. So last year we saw a 1% increase in STEAM right across the county, but obviously that reflected upon the 12-13 year performance rather than the 13-14 and now the 14-15 that we're moving into next. So STEAM is always 12 months and a little bit more behind actually. So we would expect these to be reflected in the next set of figures that are produced. And I think from what we've been discussing this morning, because Councillor Watts has raised lots of valid points, many of which I've been grappling with myself, because even though our roads are great now, for example, if we keep having cyclists and we keep attracting people in the numbers, they won't be, will they? So this council needs to make a policy decision. Is it really going to invest in this area, which does mean roads and it does mean staffing? Because don't forget, we did these events really relying upon the goodwill of staff, and that, you know, that can't continue, and that's why we've made specific provisions within things like our people strategy to make sure there are opportunities in an appropriate way for people. But I think on the wider policy issue, is this where Monmouthshire is going long term? Is this the ambition? That's probably something for the Cabinet member to address with you.
Councillor Hayward, are you content with that response, or would you like to follow up? Okay, over to Councillor Prosser.
Thank you, Chair. Going to reiterate several points that have already been raised. But first of all, I'd like to say what a wonderful thing it was, all these cycle races. I mean, I must say, I must compliment the team on the exposure that Monmouthshire got during the time when we had television across Europe. You know, advertising that Monmouthshire is a tourist county and come and visit us and spend your money here. So I must congratulate the team for thinking ahead and outside the box to a certain degree to the way we might have thought in the past. And it's quite obvious that must have had some good, as my colleague on my left said, but we need to know the fine detail. I mean, the papers presented today, page after page after page of glorious headlines and paper extracts. Yes, I can see all that. I can read that in the paper. I understand all that. But at the end of the day, in this committee, I'm a county councillor scrutinising what was in it for my constituents. You know, what was in it for them, and are we doing the right thing? And to that end, I would like to see in future, because you're asking for guidance here, you're asking for guidance, are we getting it right? What kind of reports do you want in the future? How do we justify holding these events? You know, so the first thing is, I would like to see a one-page report in the future. You can put it all on one page. And on that one page, you could have, if these figures were available, if not, get them, is what I say, footfall in the main towns, right? Before, during and after. Straight measure, that is a benchmark. Local impact, you know, interviews with traders before, during and after. You haven't got to go to every single trader, but get a feel for it, get a benchmark for it. Were we doing any good? Yes, there's going to be criticism because of road closures, and there's going to be, you don't get everything right, and it's a learning curve. But at the end of the day, was there an overall local impact for the benefit of the community? And you have to identify those benefits. But you can do it on one page, you know? You can say, this is the sort of financial impact, these are the number of tourists. A lot of the figures presented today are sort of generic figures, which, you know, sort of county-wide, Wales-wide, UK-wide, and really the local constituents don't identify with that. We have to, as an authority, of course we do, because we have to play our role in the whole Wales structure. But we do need some local agendas in here when you report back in the future. And the only other comment I've got is the preparation for the future, which a colleague on my right raised. We do need to make sure that with all these ideas we have, how is it going to be sustainable? I mean, we're in severe financial times, and the best will in the world. You know, I'd love to do loads of things in Abergavenny and in Monmouthshire in general, if I had loads of money and could do it, but I haven't. So, you know, it's the same with authority. We have to sort of tailor our cloth. But that doesn't mean we can't do it. What I'm saying is we have to get the model right so it's self-sustainable. And where needed, there may be some adjustments required to facilitate it. So that's the sort of report I would like to see in the future. Local impact, very important. How does the community benefit? An open question. How does my community benefit from this exercise? Right? And I know you're going to come up with things like healthier people, the cycling clubs have increased, and all those sorts of things. But we need to have those listed as the positives in your report going forward. And preparation is the other thing, you know, absolutely. What about the future? It was mentioned about the Tour de France. Yes, please, let's have it in Monmouthshire. Absolutely. But we need to prepare for that. And it's a long-term plan.
I think a couple of questions there, but one really useful suggestion from Councillor Foster is around having that 1-2 pager on key statistics, key return on investment, the impact assessment of the event. And I know, Ian, that you mentioned that this is a part of an ongoing process and that you wanted to come back to us potentially again. And I think we'd really welcome the suggestion that Councillor Prosser has made being put into action. But sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you, but if you go ahead and respond to Councillor Prosser, that'd be great.
No, I think that's all very valid. Everything you've said there, completely agree with. There are some details that we have got and some details that we haven't got. It was a learning process, and you know we need to learn from that and reflect and see what going forward in these events. What is the most important dates to capture? So, yeah, take on board those comments.
In terms of the sustainability, I think maybe, is there anything, what's your understanding of how sustainable this is? Because that was a useful, you know, contribution there from Councillor Foster in terms of, you know, our investment in this and what it's going to look like long term?
I think with any major event, we're talking world or European events that you're mentioning there, there's going to have to be some investment from the council, because, you know, to get those types of you're talking. It's why we put the major event strategy in place, which came through this council recently. You know, that is linking with Welsh Government aspirations, and, you know, cycling is very much on their agenda, and there are some conversations about some bigger events coming to Wales, and we're involved in those conversations. So yeah, it's very much about lining things up, but sustainability, there's always going to have to be some front loading for these bigger events, and we've got to be clear on, you know, I suppose on what the return on investment of that money would return to Monmouthshire. But to get the bigger, you know, the huge events, there's always going to be a little money to start that in, and that's, I think, what we did with the Road Race Championships. We did get some sponsors on board. We didn't achieve some funding from Welsh Government that we thought we were going to achieve, but apart from that, everything did go as we you know, assumed it would.
Thank you, Chair. Probably more of a suggestion, really, members, and that's obviously the information that you're asking for today in relation to the STEAM figures can't be produced as yet, and we've got to wait for Welsh Government to come forward with that, and as soon as it's available, we will present it to you. But maybe it's more of a lessons learned, reflective piece that you're looking for, our experience of running 2 major events. What did we find? What could we have done better? What worked really well? And perhaps that's more relevant to bring forward to a future meeting. The only other point that I was going to add as well is that, you know, how are we going to sustain it is such an important question. And obviously the investments we've made to date have been on the basis of investor generate or investor save in some ways, because lots of you have mentioned health benefits and indirect benefits. But it isn't just about finance, and I think Councillor Watts mentioned previously, you know, have we got the staffing capacity and resources? And I think really the event strategy does set the context for some of this stuff, but also the people strategy that we've been speaking about. So you'll recall, as part of my Chief Officer report at the latter end of last year, we spoke about the number of volunteers, staffing volunteers, that we attracted to help run the Road Race Championships. And over 100 members of staff took part in helping that event to take place. And that was worth, I think, in terms of economic impact, about £10,000 a day. If we were going to pay for the equivalent of that on the market, that's what it would have cost us. But we've got to think about the mechanisms we put in place to enable staff to step forward to do that. We can't rely on goodwill. We can't rely on managers saying, yes, go on, take the day, or we're going to make you take a day's annual leave. So what we're trying to do around this is put in place the supporting frameworks that do allow us to accelerate and do allow us to invest sustainably in what we think would be a good future venture for this authority.
Thank you, Kelly. Is that okay, Councillor Prosser? I'll move on. I've got 4 other members to speak now, and I'll start with Councillor Wintle.
Thank you, Chair. I'm sorry, Ian, you're having a bit of a bashing today. But no, there's lots of lovely positives, and I must agree to some extent with what Kelly just said. But we've got all the positives. You know, the fact that Monmouthshire was on television, that got us out. You know, you can't afford to pay for that sort of advertising. But I say we've got all the positives, but we've got none of the negatives. So we want to know what things we've got to avoid and what things to go forward. And well done anyway.
If I can just comment, because I think that's a really relevant point, and some of the negatives don't relate so much to the way in which the event was run, but going back to the points that all of you have made, really, in terms of wider implications, we know, for example, that the 2.76 million return on investment for the Road Race Championships could have been much bigger had we have more visitor accommodation in the area, because all of our hotels and B&Bs were full, people were going out to the hinterland. And wouldn't it have been fantastic to capture that economic benefit within Monmouthshire? So really that puts the pressure on us to get more tourism accommodation up and running quite quickly. So we've got to think about the wider impact this has for other policy areas as well, which I think is important to document as part of those lessons learned, really.
Thanks, Kelly. Councillor Dovey and Councillor Edwards.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I guess I've got a more positive attitude in some ways about this. I read an article just to give Councillor Watts a thought, in the Telegraph it happened to be, and it was talking about the undiscovered county. It was a property thing, but basically it was talking about Monmouthshire and all its facilities in terms of the area, the beauty of it, basically saying what a great place it was to be. And I think one of the problems we do have as a county is that people don't know about Monmouthshire very much as a county. You can talk to our neighbours in Wales, and John might have found the same, but as go around as chairman, the one thing I've found that even our closest neighbours don't know a lot about Monmouthshire. It's that place over there, up England, so to speak. So I come to this issue from that sort of perspective. The one thing I do know is if we had to pay for the exposure that we got from these recent cycling events in the commercial world, we would just not have got anywhere near it. I mean, it would have been totally beyond our ken to get the sort of exposure that we have here. And so I see that the points about what we need to do are well made, and I believe in those. But the events themselves, I'm quite concerned about how we secure the future of these events. Have we got the resource to be able to do it, and at resource at all sorts of levels? The point made about accommodation is a really good one. We really struggle for accommodation. We struggle for accommodation in Chepstow, for instance. And the other thing is, I do believe that there would be other counties, not only in Wales, but also in competitive areas such as Gloucestershire. You've only got to look at the Cotswolds and what they could do up there. So I'm concerned that we have the resource to try and retain this. So the negative points I take on board, but I think we have to make sure that we make the preparations and have our game plan together to retain these events, because I think others would really jump at achieving them. The only other point I wish to make is looking at some of the figures that we have on this pie chart here. And I wonder just how they are put together. I just wonder how they source the figures. I guess you could source parking. How do you source an income for petrol? I mean, do you talk about all the gas stations around the area, do an analysis of that? I just wonder about that. I'd like to know more about how we arrive at these figures, how they are resourced, if we've got to accept them. Thank you, Chairman.
Yeah, I take on board those comments, and thank you very much for those comments. I will go back to Frontline, who have produced this for the Tour of Britain, and get more detailed breakdown on how they've come to the figures. I know how we've come to the ones on the National Road Race Championships, because I've seen the background and the evidence, and you take a market segment, and interviews are taken place, and then they're scaled up to the 40,000. So that's how the National Road Race Championships. On the Tour of Britain ones, I would imagine that a similar process has taken place, but I'm not sure. So I need to find that out and bring it back to this committee.
Councillor Duffy.
Thank you for that. I'm happy about that. Thank you.
Councillor Edwards and then Councillor Evans.
Thanks, Chair. Where do I start? As an Abergavenny member, I go all the way back to 1992, when I was first elected. No, 1991, when I was first elected to the town council. Yeah, pardon? Sorry, I thought you said 1890. Yeah, it could be. I feel like it on occasions. You know, Abergavenny has a long tradition of cycling. You know, in 1992, actually, being mayor that particular year, I stood on the rostrum and Bill Owen and his cycling clubs and all the rest of it put on a, you know, very good display. And it's from small acorns, so he'd already done it a couple of times before, but from those small acorns, the big oak trees have developed, and I'm very proud. So I can understand, if you like, to a certain extent, what Armand said with reference to the poor, maybe a slightly poor or disappointed with the turnout in Chepstow. You know, the turnout in Abergavenny has been built up over many, many years. You know, you're talking about nearly, you know, 25 years. And unfortunately this year I was away on holiday when the national championships were on, so visually I can't speak about it. But what I can speak about, though, is the visual impact it had in 2009. Once again, I was mayor of Abergavenny, and we had the national championships there. And it was interesting that on the Sunday, round about, once the race had got, the big race had left Abergavenny, everybody disappeared off the main street. You didn't see anybody at all. I thought, God, that's short and sweet. But then, when they were all due to come back in about 2:30, the town filled up again. Now, where had all those thousands of people gone? They'd gone into the restaurants, there's no doubt about it. You know, this is where they'd spent their money. And, you know, there's obviously any practical survey of the town asking certainly the eating establishments how well they did. They must have done extremely well. And I can only visualize the same thing happen when we had the Tour de France and everything else that came through Abergavenny, or Tour de Britain, isn't it, through Abergavenny. Yes, there is a problem. The hotels, we are short of hotels and B&Bs. B&Bs in particular, I think one of the reports that Nicola Edwards gave us was the non-existence very nearly of bed and breakfast in the county, and it really is a great shame. Hotels, we've got one about to be built in Abergavenny, and I understand there are some negotiations going on in Monmouth, and I'd like to think that both these will be up and running within the next sort of 12 months, if possible. 2 cycling clubs in Abergavenny, it's a continual build-up programme. And, you know, one can't but help but acknowledge the input, first of all, on Bill Owen as the mastermind, if like, in the background, slowly being taken over. And I quite appreciate, Ian, that you and your department have had a massive input into this over this last couple of years. And with the input also of the volunteers that the volunteers as well. When we were talking, if you remember, Chair, in the pre-meet, and I said, what happens after Bill Owen? Is your department in a position to take over that sort of ultimate role of El Supremo, if you like,
Thanks for the comments. We are working very hard about legacy in Abergavenny, because we are aware of things have been built around Bill Owen, but there is quite a few, and we're looking to put on a big event around the Velathon in June, specifically in Abergavenny, to bring all these are really renowned people. And Rob Penn, who's on telly with Freddie Flintoff, you know, he did the Festival of Cycling. So I think if we can properly engage and put a model together, I think you know, the sustainability, certainly in Abergavenny for the cycling, you know, the Festival of Cycling is.
You know, we've all talked about the figures. Even if they were 10% incorrect, if you like, they're still massive and very supportive of the end. But it would be interesting to get more, you know, the further detail we've asked for. I think I'll leave it there. Right, okay.
I think there might be a couple of suggestions we'll have when we come to the recommendations based on what you're saying, Councillor Edwards, but we'll move on to Councillor Evans then. Thank you.
Right, thank you, Madam Chair. It's easy to criticise after an event, and it's easy for us to criticise the people who was in the front of doing the event. But as it's been said here today, the amount of staff that volunteered their time at no cost. But I think when you're doing the breakdown sheet, I think if you could include what that cost would have been, it would show a better outlook on the final figure, because that would, if we got that cost, it would affect what the underspent or whatever, it would affect that. But what I've seen of it, and I got to say, Caldicott did benefit from it with the bed and breakfast and the hotels, and Mager as well, the new hotel. They did benefit from that racing, and I would like to see more. John touched on about having the one sheet, stroke two, and I think that would make it a lot easier for us, because we're not accountants. Some people think they are, but you know, we're not. And yes, we have got to answer to the public, because that's why we've been elected. Take it back to the officers and thank them as well for giving their free time up.
Very valid point, and I think that's come across from everyone, is that we do really appreciate the work that's gone into this, and there is a clear value. I think our just concern is just around the data we've got in front of us today, being able to tangibly scrutinise that in the format that it's in. And I'll just take any further questions, and then we'll move on to the recommendations, because we might want to...
event, first event, was one they couldn't perhaps envisage, a cycle race at the bottom of Chepstow. And to be frank, I was struggling. I was for it, but I was struggling a bit with it. At the end of the event, everybody that had been there at the event said how brilliant it was, and the people who organised it, the circus, if you like, that go around these various places, said that they were really anxious to come back and run it again. I think that's right, Ian, isn't it? So I think actually Chepstow as an initial event started off very well, and now it has a story to tell which will be amongst the local people and the wider area up into the Forest of Dean and places like that. I think it would draw a bigger section of the public next time. It was a good event.
Councillor Edwards?
There was another matter we raised to think.
They'll certainly be riding on our roads, so yeah, it's a good... Well, last week, on the tumble, we had Sky, NTFO, which are two of the most world-famous cycling all day up the tumble, tweeting, talking about Abergavenny. They were talking about, are we in the cafes, come and see us in Crickhowell. They were, you know, come and see us in Abergavenny. These teams are on our roads. We don't see it on a day-to-day basis. The social media is out there though, and the hits they're getting is unbelievable. Oh, we're going up the tumble, and I know this week just from stories that people came into Cardiff for a big event, and I think 4 or 5 of them got on the train to get up to the tumble and then ride the tumble. So you know, there's things going on that we're not always aware of, but this is always out there. The cycling teams are so good with their social media and taking photos, and our tourism signs of the tumble were far-reaching. I think you talked, Kelly, about some of the hotels are doing tours, cycling tours from... it's all positive, but I take on board what Councillor Watts said about not everyone... and
Yes, come here and that sort of thing. Can we build on that through articles in the press? I know we can't afford the advertising, but can we be a bit smart in through the press, maybe even the national presses, it's cycle magazines, it's all that sort of thing? Can we not do something about boosting the use of the county for various activities, like you said, teams come into practice, whatever it is, to make it the wider area more aware of what's on offer here.
Thanks, Chair. I think we've got to do that for lots of things, not just cycling. I think you're absolutely right. It's, you know, kind of heads down, move on, and you don't always take the opportunity to reflect and to really celebrate from today, Councillor Dovey, is it wouldn't take much, would it, to add up all the press articles and the coverage that we have, put a pound, shillings and pence value on that, and then work out the advertising value equivalent of what has been achieved. Because you're absolutely right. If we had to pay for it, we couldn't afford it. So yes, you've all commented, lots of pretty pictures, lots of headlines, lots of stuff in the local and national press. What is the advertising value equivalent?
But there, I mean, I just want to say that, to be fair to the local authority, I will say this: they do use social media probably better than I do, and they've got an.
That they come back to us with more clarity. Councillor Watt started the discussion very clearly about cost data. I think Councillor Prosser's points around having a 1 or 2 pager as an executive summary with that key data. You can provide the methodology behind it as a larger document if needed, but we need that key data in a very succinct format for us to be able to approve it or approve the recommendations as they stand. That's my understanding. Members, are you happy with that, that we asked for this to come back? Councillor Dovey?
Just one thing with that, Chairman, an understanding of how the council can resource, if that is the word, these events to ensure that we retain them if they get the success that we think they will, and others might choose to want to have a slice of it.
Yeah, it's about the sustainability issue, and that's been raised, and I think that will all be noted. So thank you. Okay, thank you very much, and thanks, Ian. Really appreciate your contribution today. Month 9 and the revenue monitoring month 9 reports.
For the sake of, I understand we're being corporately assessed today. Yeah.
Linking in to check. Yeah.
What are they?
Wales Audit Office.
Wales Audit Office.
Yes.
Specifically, who do they write to us, or they just have their agents viewing us from afar?
It's part of their presence here in council this week as part of the wider corporate assessment.
Okay.
Which the
Is this, and this is a new thing, isn't it? I'd assume that we're being corporately assessed in this fashion. I don't think we've ever had anybody sat at the room before and assuming that they're looking at this. I don't ever recall it being. Have we
Live streaming, have been doing for the last
I'm
so
not
many
saying,
months.
no, I'm not saying that's a bad thing. I'm simply saying I can't recall being corporately assessed either on live streaming or with anybody in the back of the room before. That's the only thing.
Yeah, I don't think this is the only assessment. There's interviews and all sorts of things going on.
No, but before this, is this? My question is this a new way of doing it? Because I can't recall it happening before. In this fashion.
Sorry, Chair, if I can just interject, just to provide some clarity. Our turn, I think our last corporate assessment was done at the end of 2010, going into 2011. They are with us for a week and possibly some of next week as well to do some mop-up interviews. But I think you're right. I think the observation style, the authority.
All right, thank you.
Mark, would you like to introduce the first paper for us, please?
Yeah, for the purposes of anyone watching the stream, my name is Mark Howthrop. I'm the Assistant Head of Finance for MCC. The first paper is the Capital Budget Monitoring Report, Month 9 Outturn Forecast. The report, perhaps unusually, has created a degree of confusion in your mind. So I've gone back and had a look at that report, and I can perhaps anticipate where that confusion arises. The actual links in the appendices actually linked to a month 6 version of the monitoring report rather than a month 9. I've actually sent you a separate document this morning to resolve that situation, that you've actually now got the month 9 information so that you can compare that to the actual information in the report. But I acknowledge it's something that I need to resolve in terms of it reverting back to an earlier version of the... Yeah, it's been emailed this morning. What I will do is I will take you through the detail of it. Obviously, the capital programme, in terms of the nature of the projects that Economy and Development look at, total 800,000. It's about 5 or 6 projects. I can talk you through the consequences of that this morning.
Just as a point of, I guess, reference, unless I've got the document in front of me, to be fair, I don't think we can give it any, you know, we're talking about due diligence, if you like, for the sake of these people watching us. How are we expected? I mean, no disrespect, I understand you've tried to rectify this, but we can't evaluate or assess or analyse or scrutinise anything if we haven't got it. Ask you questions and you do your best to answer. But that's not how this is going to play out now, is it, really?
Well, that paper that I've updated is a supporting paper. The detail in the report is still accurate and reflects the month 9 position. It's simply the case that
I guess this can only be decided by the chair. But obviously, you know, the way the scrutiny works is the devil's in the detail, isn't it?
Well, it's down to you as committee, us as a committee, should I say, report. We just haven't got the underlying data documents, the appendices which goes with it. So it's up to you, us as a committee, to decide whether or not we feel we've got enough data to detail to scrutinise.
the fault is a personal one of mine, and obviously I would be quite happy to come back at your convenience to actually rectify that situation, if that would be...
I'll take suggestions from members, if that's okay. Thank you, Mark. Councillor Prosser?
I mean, we've got a report in front of us which we can pass comment on and ask questions about, albeit incomplete, yeah? Things move on, and by the time we get to the next meeting, we'll have a next report in, won't we? You know, it'll be sort of... We won't have any chance anyway, because it'll all be new again. It'll be on the next report, if you see what I mean. Yes. Yeah, what I'm saying is time moves on. So I'd be minded to ask questions on what we've got so far, and if it's incomplete, you can come back with the remainder.
Do others agree with Councillor Prosser? Councillor Winton?
Yes, I do agree with John. But this is really, you know, I've got it on my computer. But you know, it's just been the policy for a long time that computers are supposed to come to the meetings. You're not always going to get a paper.
Okay. Are there any other suggestions? Otherwise, I'll move Councillor Prost's suggestion that we do look at this with the report as it stands, rather than postpone this item to another meeting.
Madam Chair, I got to disagree with my learned friend in the middle. I feel that we should have it in front of us, for the simple reason we're here to scrutinise, and no matter what officer is in front of us, is to answer the questions. If we're not seen to be doing this properly, and bearing in mind we are being monitored, I think we should have the information that's been sent out this morning in front of us. We have got another economy and development meeting scheduled next week, right? Perhaps it could be brought in front of us then.
Yeah, the next meeting is the 30th of March, so time-wise it isn't too far ahead, so it potentially still would, it just means that we're going to have a very, very long meeting on the 30th of March, but again, that's down to you as a group to decide collectively. Sorry, Councillor Edwards?
Yeah, I agree entirely with Councillor Evans. I don't think that to receive a report of about 7 or 8 minutes ago, which is what it boils down to, is not realistic. So,
Councillor Dovey, and then I'll move on. Yes.
I set that document together. I think we are a scrutiny committee.
Yeah. I think we accept it was just a genuine error, and that on this occasion the majority seems to be that we'll defer this to the next committee meeting. Are members happy with that? And we'll move on. Okay, sorry Mark, if you wouldn't mind coming forward then on the 30th, I think that would, yeah.
As I said, the fault is mine. I concede that actually from a technological point of view, I haven't done what I've said to do, which was put it on the hub. I've tried to rectify that. I agree with Councillor Wintle that actually the position that I was looking at was month 9 and probably doesn't reflect the reality now anyway. And there were some interesting principles to consider, but I fully expect that I'll come back and talk to you about the report in the end of March.
Thank you very much. We really appreciate that. Okay, members, let's move back and onto the agenda item. Onto our work programme, which we had extensive discussion about at our last meeting. We will now then have our next meeting on the 30th of March, which will include now those 2 budget reports. There's one item just to be aware of, that CMC Squared would like to come to our 21st of April meeting and wondered whether we could move SRS onto the 30th. So it's a straight swap. It won't affect the agenda items. It just means that we have SRS on the 30th and CMC Squared on the 21st.
Yeah. Chair, I'm happy. Can you just remind me the timings of those meetings, please? 8 o'clock?
Yeah, we've got 9:30 pre-meeting. On the 30th, it's a 9:30 pre-meeting with a 10 o'clock start. That will be quite a long meeting, and we might have to move from this chamber at 12 o'clock to go and do the tourism item, because this room has been booked.
All right,
Because we
okay.
had to put this as a special meeting.
Yeah.
Sorry, Mark, yeah.
Sorry, I've just noticed you've moved on to item 8. The confusion was around item 7.1. 7.2 revenue is perfectly fine for you to consider.
The revenue report. Sorry, we'll
Yes,
go back to...
through the chair, I was just about to raise that. Have we also deferred item 7.2 because you've gone on further? We seem to have all the information relevant to 7.2.
Well, again, it's as you as a committee, would you rather take the two budget items together, or do you want to do the revenue item now and the capital?
I think not to take them together will add to the confusion. That's my own
Yeah.
personal view. I think it's appropriate to...
We had assumed, yes, that would be the case,
Yeah.
then we'd take them both together. I appreciate that we can look at the revenue in its entirety, but it's about having the two together, like Councillor Watt said. So, is that okay with everyone? So we'll defer both items. Okay. So moving back to the work programme. So Councillor Watts, yes, a 9:30 start, 10 o'clock. The main meeting the formal meeting will begin, and we'll move down into the conference room on the ground floor for the tourism item, just because this room has been booked. So, that'll be more of a workshop interactive session anyway, as a part of the agenda. Okay. So, is everyone content to have SRS rather than CMC Squared on that date? And we'll swap those two items. Okay.
Excuse me, Chair. I've got slightly lost with all these deferments and things. Could you just guide me back to where you're actually referring to, please?
Yes, we're talking the next meeting is on the 30th of March. We will now have both of those budget reports on that meeting. It starts at 9:30 with a pre-meeting and 10 o'clock official start. The meeting will take place in the council chamber, and at 12 o'clock it will move downstairs to the conference room to enable us to do the workshop on the tourism item, purely down to the fact that this room has already been booked at that time, because it's a special meeting we've had to put into the diary. Okay? And the CMC Squared item will be moved to the 21st of April. The SRS item will come in front of us on the 30th. Everyone clear? Yeah, okay, so we'll just look at the Cabinet Planner as well. So if everyone's happy with the work programme as it stands, if we just run through the Cabinet Planner, please. So are there any items on there that you wish to see on our work programme which aren't already included? Strong communities as well, possibly. I think much of what's on here is coming forward, hence quite large agendas that we have for the next two meetings, because we've identified them from the Cabinet Planner. But unless there's anything...
Only one thing to note, Chair, is the I've emailed members a report from Mike Moran this morning, which is to do with Caldecott pitch. I've sent you that for information because it's an interesting report, complex situation, and I think the officer wanted to get as many people's views as possible. So I've sent it to you. If you've got views, please can you contact Mike directly? Okay. This morning.
Okay, members, thank you very much for your contributions today, and look forward to seeing you on the 30th of March. Thank you.
Thanks.
No, no, I...
I got your touchy email.
Some people have had it from Czech, from Portugal. I don't know how they do it, honestly.
Stupidly, I opened it.
No, it's fine.
It was just some article, and there were some Wales pills or something.
Yeah, you thought it was from me because I've been
Well,
trying to
no, what it is, any member that would send me anything, I would assume that it's...
But it's not one, it's not from me. You know,
How? What happened to that?
I never send best wishes, I just almond.
You normally say best wishes
I
to
don't.
me.
Regards. I never say best wishes. I never ever said that to you.
Oh, and this almond dog.
What do you do about almond? Oh. I hope you all enjoyed it.